Hello, welcome everybody to Book Passage Live. We're here today to talk about No Spring Chicken, the new book by Francine Falk-Allen. A little bit about the authors today. Francine Falk-Allen was born in Los Angeles, where she contracted polio at the age of 3 and was hospitalized for 6 months, experiences which formed the background of her memoir about living with a disability, not a poster child. She has lived most of her life in Northern California, currently in San Rafael. She has always craved creative outlets, including singing and recording with various groups, painting, writing songs, poetry, and essays. Francine facilitates a polio survivors group in Marin County and also a meetup writing group, Just Right Marin County, and is an alternate member of the City of San Rafael's ADA Compliance Review Committee. She received the Kirkus Review Star for Excellence in Writing in 2018, which also named her memoir to Best Books of 2018. Not a Poster Child won the 2019 Living Now Book Awards Gold Medal for Inspirational Memoir, Female, and also won a Silver Medal for Sarton Women's Book Award for the 2018 memoir. The book appeared on several other Best Books of 2018 lists, including BuzzFeed's, Pop Sugar's, and Cyrus Webb. Falk-Allen was named The Conversation magazine as one of the 25 women making a difference in 2019. She was the polio representative interviewed in a PBS Nobel Prize media film, The War Against Microbes. She loves movies, pool exercise, outdoors, travel, lots of British tea, and a little champagne now and then. Today in conversation with Francine is Betsy Graziani Fasbinder. She is a genre-jumping, thrice-published, award-winning author with a novel, Fire and Water, a memoir, Filling Her Shoes, and a how-to From Page to Stage, to her credit. She's garnered gold and bronze IPPY awards, a Booklist starred review, and a collection of other blingy congratulations for her writing. In addition to her own stories, Betsy delights in helping others write and tell their own lived and imagined stories, both as a writing coach and a speaking coach. She features stories of others on her weekly podcast, The Morning Glory Project, Stories for Determination. Thank you both so much for being here today, and I want to welcome you now to the stage.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here today. And Francine, it's an honor to be able to interview you and talk about this beautiful book. I have to say, when I met you a few years ago, when your first book came out, I was really impressed by your tenacity, by how you have a desire for fun and that you seek it, that despite whatever physical challenges you may have, you want to dance and you want to sing and you want to have music and you want to see the world. And that's what inspired me. So I'm really happy to welcome you and to be having this conversation with you about No Spring Chicken. So let's just begin.
Thank you, Betsy. Hi, everybody. I particularly want to thank Book Passage for hosting and Zach for his patience and my insisting on having a hybrid event. So there were a few friends and family here with us today, people from my writing group and other authors out in our backyard. And I particularly also want to thank Richard, my husband, who's been a great help setting up with both the tech and the physical environment. And in thanking Betsy, I need to let you know that it's also her birthday. So it's especially nice of her to come here today to be with us. Besides which, she's doing this for chicken feed. And that's a shame because she's impeccable.
Oh, no.
But before we get started, Betsy, I know there's a question on everyone's mind.
Well, if you're going to publish a book called No Spring Chicken, you, of course, have to ask, why did the chicken cross the road?
Yes, exactly. But that's not the question I want to answer right now.
Of course, I already blew it.
Right now. Why did the chicken go to a seance?
Why did the chicken go to the seance?
To get to the other side.
No.
Same answer, different question.
Isn't that how life works sometimes? Well, Francine, as we begin, I'm wondering if I can just sort of ask you, publishing a book is such an arduous task, as the authors among us know. I'm wondering, what was it that inspired you to write it? And who do you think is your audience for this book?
I have a lifetime of experience with dealing with physical impairment. And I felt that people should be encouraged to continue to travel. And what's the matter with the tech? Should I keep going? Okay, sorry.
Little tech problem, folks. We're going to fix it here. You know that the Navajos weave little flaws into their blankets so they don't offend God. So we're not going to offend God today. We're going to have some flaws.
For sure.
All
So
right.
I felt that I had a lot to share, that it would be helpful to tell people how I've dealt with my difficulties. And I didn't intend it to be just for disabled people. I intended it to be for anyone who's aging and starting to face any kind of physical difficulty. And also family members who have people in their lives that are beginning to face physical difficulties.
Let's see. Are you able to hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. That might have gotten rid of our buzz. So Francine, when I was reading your book, you know, I thought it was more about people who had long range disabilities or challenges of that kind. And I was surprised to find myself in your pages because I'm 62 as of today. I'm 62 and my body is changing, and I'm finding that I have to make adaptations too to my own travel. So I understand that you have a section of your book called Mom Has Changed, or Have I? Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes. I'd like to read something from the introduction and then from the middle of the book. Actually, we're starting in the middle and working through back to the beginning. So this is from the introduction. Some people with disabilities do not like to be referred to as handicapped, and I fully respect that. During the disability rights movement, the description "a person with a disability" became the preferred term. I've almost always used the term handicap to describe myself because it denotes being capable but needing an allowance for a less than normal condition. You do have to ask people with physical challenges what term they prefer. Also, I thought a wild handicapper sounded more fun and kind of amusing, like an adventurous, untamed bird. And wild sabler, well, it just didn't have a ring to it. So throughout No Spring Chicken, I refer to myself and the person in your life to whom the material I'm covering applies, perhaps it's you, as wild handicappers. This next part is from the middle of the book. None of us is ever ready for that day when a parent ceases to be the rock of support or meticulous housekeeper or whatever they were before they hit that point, which can come as late as 90 or as early as 50. Dementia, of course, makes it more difficult to find things to do together, but even people with advanced Alzheimer's enjoy simple activities like listening to music, especially pieces they loved in years past. It does make a difference whether a person has been disabled or handicapped for many years or whether it's a new condition. It has been necessary for me to live with partial paralysis and weakness for 70 years and counting. Sometimes it really pisses me off that it is so freaking difficult, and I'm sorry if people don't like that language, but that's the way I speak, or that I have new weakness or more severe fatigue than I used to have, or that my step falters more than it used to. I don't think of myself as elderly, although I am now 73, just as an older woman. Most friends in my age group are having a little more limitation these days too, but they can still walk a few miles at the least, or even go on a hike of several miles in the mountains, as well as being able to stand up at parties for an hour or so and chat. Losing function feels so unfair, but it happens to almost everyone at some point. At first, it's easy to be in denial. Your friend or mom might say, for example, "I don't need a cane," when really the issue is how it looks. She feels that only the elderly use canes. It's natural to want to be seen as young and vibrant and able, but there usually comes a time when your mom or spouse or even you will need to admit that a little or a lot of assistance is needed. Chastising, even judgmental self-talk is guaranteed to be of no use and will surely be detrimental, and ignoring the problem will exacerbate it. So my advice is to adapt to the changes the person you love is undergoing, as well as to your own body's changes. As we age, a primary trait we're called upon to develop is patience. Above all, be kind to your wild handicapper and to yourself.
Well, that's what brings to mind what I was saying, that as my own body has changed and I had a health challenge a few years ago, I can't quite keep up with people in the same way that I once did. And sometimes I feel embarrassed to say so. So I push myself and then the next day I'm wiped out. And your book sort of empowered me to be a little more assertive and ask for more of what I need so that I can really enjoy the excursion and enjoy my company and let them go on ahead if they need to. And I'm finding that it's really empowering. And, you know, everybody's body is going to change inevitably. And whether you've had a long-term disability or a temporary one, or just ages and stages, right? That kind of happens. And so I see also that some people are really self-conscious about using assistance of any kind. And I know that you have a great deal to say about that as well.
I do. I had some hesitancy to using Lofstrand crutches when that was first presented to me by my polio doctor. And I saw when I walked down the hall in front of a mirror that I walked much better with them. And I still don't always use two. But another thing that happened was that I realized in going to a lot of seminars in big hotels for my previous profession, that there were all these people on scooters, and I had a lot of judgment about it. I thought, that's for old, fat, lazy people. And I kept walking and walking and walking through these big hotels till I finally realized that was really foolish of me. And eventually for travel, we bought a travel scooter, which is fantastic. It folds up and you just put it on the plane and put it in the back of the car or whatever. And I just got over it because I can have a lot more fun. I can go to a museum and then stop it and get up and walk around a little bit and then get back on my trike and go. So I'm really encouraging of people using whatever assistive devices they need in order to have a good time.
Well, that's sort of the point, right? And that's the other thing, Francine, that impresses me both about this book and about you, is that you really want to see the world and experience art and experience music and not deprive yourself. And I think of it as living all the way, living as much to the degree that your body and your mood and your frame of mind will take you. And so it's really kind of exciting to see that. Maybe perhaps you can read a little bit about, I think that you had something about adjusting to using equipment.
Yes. Well, I do have something about a little trip that we took to Paris. We've traveled quite a bit. First, I wanted to mention that I've been to Ireland, the home of my dad's ancestors, several times. And I wanted to ask you, Betsy, what do you get when you cross a chicken with a four-leaf clover?
Oh no, what do you get when you got cross the chicken with a four-leaf clover?
The cluck of the Irish.
Brother. These are even just a tiny bit physically painful, Francine, just a little bit.
If anybody thought this wasn't going to be silly, they came to the wrong place. Okay, so one summer day in Paris, we asked our hotel concierge, Benoit, how far it was to a particular restaurant, Le Petit Prince de Paris, a place we'd heard had excellent food and a fun atmosphere. We had about 15 minutes to get there. Ah, oui, it is not that far, Benoit said. It will take you 5 minutes. Thankful for the generous time frame, we set off, me with my cane and Richard with his boundless energy. 20 minutes later, after walking several blocks and hiking up a moderate hill, we still were not there yet. And I was nearly exhausted. We realized that for Benoit, this was a 5-minute walk, but it was about a half mile, which for me, with my taking a break to lean against a lamppost or sit down in a sidewalk cafe every block or so, is at least a half hour's walk. This is before I got the scooter. Ever since that experience, if a clerk at the airport, a concierge at a hotel, a storekeeper, or anyone else I'd expect to be able to estimate distance accurately tells me it's very close, I ask how long it takes to walk it, and then at least triple the time. I sometimes ask how many blocks, because most people cannot estimate distances very accurately, and asking, is it a quarter mile, will usually get you an answer of, oh no, it's not that far. When I hear their time estimate, which in European or city terms is for an able-bodied person who not only walks everywhere very quickly every day, but also carries groceries home in both arms, I know whether I can do it. People will often look at me with my crutches or cane and still not understand that a block is far enough, 2 is pushing it, and beyond that may be a hardship or necessitate allowing 20 minutes to include stops for rest or even require a car ride. On a leisurely day, when Richard and I plan to stop every block or so and sit down, it's less of a problem. People don't understand walking limitations unless they've had them. Even nurses and doctors who deal with these problems on a daily basis often don't translate their knowledge into practical circumstances. The exception is my polio doctor. She totally gets it. Whenever someone tells you it's close, it's wise to be skeptical unless it is very easy for you to walk a mile or more. I don't look decrepit, so I get a lot of bad advice. Be prepared to get a lot of that in Europe, where everyone walks everywhere at a pace unseen in California. This is why they get to eat pastries all the time, and we don't.
Well, that reminds me of when you and I, shortly after we met, Francine, you asked me if I wanted to go out to lunch together. And I said, oh, sure, I'd love that. And I had all kinds of places in mind. And you were gentle and kind and sweet about it. But you said, I'm sorry, that place doesn't work for me. It's too hard. Between the parking and the walking to the restaurant, it's too difficult. And I admired how well you did that. And of course, we found a lovely place and it was fine. But I want to turn it around the other way, because I think also, even if you're able-bodied, you may be traveling with an elderly person or somebody with a physical challenge, or you may have somebody, on the same cruise or on the same tour group or something. And I sometimes feel hesitant as a reasonably able-bodied person to ask somebody, do you need help or can I help you? And I'm wondering if it's intrusive or insulting in some way. What's your feeling about that when people do?
I think if people are casual about it, it's really great. For instance, if I'm trying to get you a door at Starbucks or someplace and I'm carrying my computer case and I have a crutch in one hand and a person says, here, let me get that for you. That's fine. It's really offensive to me when someone says, you should have asked for help. You should have asked someone, and people will do that sometimes, but it's sort of like, you have to ask often enough when you have a disability. So you save up your asking chits for the times when you really need it. And people with a disability often want to be pretty independent too. So that's part of why people feel like they may offend them if they ask. But if you're casual about it, like just, the person's in a wheelchair and you say, you want me to get the door? Just like that, that's really appreciated.
Well, that's a really good tip. Well, so I'm also letting you know that there's some questions coming in from our online listeners, and one is not related to the content of the book itself, but to the writing of it. Nicole says, I'm curious about Francine's creative process, moving from her first book to her second, and why this one was this one after Not a Poster Child? Why was the sequence that way, and what's your creative process?
I needed to write Not a Poster Child because it was the story of my having had polio. And it actually started as what I thought was going to be an essay. And I wanted to get it down. I was in my 60s and I wanted to get it down before I started forgetting all these experiences, because I had really clear memories back to 2.5 and 3 years old. So I felt compelled to write it as soon as I could. And once I got started writing, I realized it was not an essay, it was a book. So then afterwards, because I kept thinking of things while I was writing it that I thought would be helpful to people who either had disabilities or were adapting to family members who had them, I thought, well, I've got more material for the future.
I'm curious, do you have to make any adaptations because of your physical challenges, just even to your writing practice in terms of special equipment in your audience, in your office or anything like that?
I have footrests. I have a chair that cost me $900 about 15 years ago and is getting a little worn out, but it adapts up and down and sideways and supports my back and all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, there is that. And I have to get up once in a while because I get backaches. So.
Well, and I would say that to folks listening, whether you're a writer or an artist of any kind, that even in those at-home kinds of places, it's a good idea to make sure that you're using good ergonomics so you're not injuring yourself. I had to get a different kind of keyboard because I was developing hand problems and things like that. So even on the small scale, for somebody, a repetitive motion like that can be problematic. Well, so I understand also that you have another story about a scooter that was quite a mad adventure in your travel. Because after all, this is a good resource book and it's got lots of good information in it, but it's also a fun travel book. So tell us a bit about your biggest adventure in the scooter.
Okay, I will. But first, Betsy, I want to ask you, what do you get when you cross a ghost with a chicken?
What do you get when you cross a ghost with a chicken?
A poultrygeist.
Oh, no.
Okay, so this story should please some of the people in the audience today, because some of the people who are here are my Yosemite family, the people that I've gone to Yosemite with. Well, we used to go every year for about 30 years, and we haven't been for a couple of years now. During our 2014 trip to Yosemite, I scootered my way back from housekeeping camp to the lodge on the paved path around dusk. Okay, there's a dog next door, I'm sorry. With hikers and bikers passing me occasionally. One couple I passed was walking hurriedly right on the curb, looking not only like foreign, inexperienced campers, but a bit nervous and dangerously close to the road. I was tempted to caution them, but decided to keep my own counsel. That's not their dog, is it? No, because they took him on the trip. Okay, while tooling along, casually enjoying the woodsy scenery surrounding me, I saw off to my left in a little clearing a huge bear statue that hadn't been there in the prior year. I was thinking it was a little odd that they'd put one in that particular location when the statue turned its head and looked at me. The very much alive dark brown bear was about 6 feet long, nose to tail, and 3 or 4 feet tall on all fours. Its head was a foot wide, including ears, the size of a grizzly, but there have only been black bear species in this area for decades, and they can be either brown or black in color. He or she was wearing a green collar placed by the Park Service, so he was clearly known in these parts, his territory, overwhelmingly, not mine. He was a mere 20 feet off the path, watching me putting by. We stared at each other, our heads slowly moving in tandem as I scooted past, and suddenly it seemed the scooter was not nearly fast enough. He took a step toward me, and as he did, I realized that ocular contact was absolutely the worst possible thing to share at that moment. So I tore my eyes away, adjusted the scooter to top speed, maybe 6 miles per hour, a bit dangerous on the curvy, bumpy, slanted path with its dips and rises, and began to think of what I was going to do if the bear followed me. Start beeping the horn, since all wild animals hate and are intimidated by noise, though the horn was rather silly, reminiscent of a clown's accessory and not loud enough to be optimally scary. Then maybe I'd throw my backpack toward him, even though it had my laptop in it, my writing on it. I back up my work, but sometimes forget to do so. National park bears know that backpacks often contain food, and I figured that was the most interesting aspect about me from a bear's perspective. After sunset is about the time animals are thinking of checking out campsites for unattended food. Please, oh please, not my laptop. Just turn around, Big Bear, I pleaded silently as I slipped away, looking over my shoulder every few seconds until I was sure he was not following me. Now I understood why that couple had been walking so close to the road. They wanted to get as much distance between themselves and an apparent grizzly without stepping into another danger. After I'd gone about a quarter mile down the path, I was sure he was not in pursuit. lumbering bears easily heard from a distance. We heard them often enough in the middle of the night when we camped in housekeeping. My heart rate had gone up during the encounter, but it had all happened too quickly for me to be very alarmed or upset, or even decide if I'd been courageous. It did make a hair-raising tale around the campfire that night. A few of my friends at Yosemite have had even closer and more direct encounters with bears, and no one's ever been attacked. The bear would win, so it's important to know how to behave with them. Normally, you slowly back away from these beasts, especially if it's a mama with cubs, but I hadn't had that option. The next afternoon, I nabbed a mammoth beer coaster at the Mountain Room Lounge at the lodge, picturing the giant head of a bear that looked just like my new pal. Here it is. I keep it in the kitchen to remind me of my good fortune, both in seeing the bear and in his disinterest in following a small human on a strange, unfamiliar little vehicle. The following year, I was conscientious about getting back to the lodge before dusk. I found, though, that I was a little wistful at the bear spot and scanned more deeply into the woods in that area each day, slightly hopeful I'd see him again. Even if you don't engage with a big scary bear, there's probably a deer, squirrel, or marmot waiting to meet you at Yosemite or one of the United States' many other incredible national and state parks. So make a reservation.
I think I'd rather have the deer than the bear. just saying here. Well, so Francine, and let me remind the online community, if you have questions coming up, you're welcome to type them into the chat room and I'll try to catch them as we go. But I want to ask you about other places that you've traveled. Perhaps what's the place that you have found the most friendly toward handicapped or disabled people, and where has been the least accommodating or friendly?
Oh gosh, let's see. We've traveled a lot. Well, I tend to like cities that are fairly flat because that's just easy for me. So I love San Francisco, but the hills are pretty prohibitive. They're pretty difficult. So I like New York. I like Vancouver, British Columbia. I love Hawaii. Hawaii is especially nice. I mean, there are a few places where there's some pretty steep hills, but they also are a really great place to rent a scooter. They'll deliver it to your hotel.
Oh, nice.
That sort of thing. I like Paris. It's actually not that hard, even with the cobblestones, because the sidewalks tend to be pretty flat. And so that's helpful. And I've begun to see scooters there, and they've also started ramping the entrances into stores and other places. And also they're really great. The museums are really great about wheelchairs, except that you have to remember to get out of them by about half an hour before, because they're not very helpful at the end of the day. I won't go into story about that in the book. So yeah, there are lots of places that I love. Oh, we love New Orleans too. And I would say that one place that is somewhat difficult is the Temple Bar neighborhood of Dublin. There is no place for a scooter or wheelchair there, which is unfortunate because there's a really good bar with really good music. But there's another really good bar with really good music right off of St. Stephen's Green that you can get to really easily.
Well, I'm detecting a theme of bars and music here that seems to be a little revealing. Which leads to a question that Linda has asked in the chat, and she says, "What keeps you so positive and in touch with the humorous side of life?"
I'm not 100% sure. I'm kind of like my father, and he had a personality very similar to mine. But I think also being in the hospital for 6 months when I was 3, I could not wait to get out. And my whole, being was oriented towards, I just want out of here. I want to get out. I want to play again. The other thing you should know is that I said my first short sentence when I was 8 months old, and it was, "Baby, go bye-bye." So that's me. I'm just like that. And things happen to me. I experience pain. I have falls from time to time, but what anyone would say, when you have a fall, you get up and you try again. That's just what you need to do in order to enjoy life.
Well, I'm wondering, I would imagine then that the pandemic era was especially challenging for you not to be able to get out in the way that you customarily do. I mean, it was challenging for everybody, but you have really itchy feet.
So I'm actually kind of a hermit too. I mean, I like to garden. I like to be in the pool. I like to watch movies. And Richard is similar in that way, except I can't get him into the pool often enough. But it wasn't horrible. We had each other. I mean, if I had been living alone, I know it would have been much more difficult. My heart goes out to everybody that was living alone, especially people who lived in high rises in the city that didn't have what we have here. I mean, here's our orange tree, you know. So
well, you have this stunningly beautiful backyard.
Several months in, I realized that if we were really careful, I could have lunch with a girlfriend if we both wore masks and we sat far apart outside. So I started doing that about once a month, and that helped get me through.
Ariel asks a question. She asks, do you have any recommendations for those who are differently abled for hiking on flat paths? And I guess she's speaking locally to Northern California, but perhaps you have other places as well for our online listeners.
There is a guide, which, gosh, I don't remember exactly how to get to it, and I apologize for that. But there's a guide for the San Francisco Bay Area about flat paths, and I've been collecting that kind of information. And if a person emailed me at my author email, which is Francine Falk-Allen at gmail.com, I will look that stuff up.
Oh, wonderful.
Pass it on.
Well, I can say that Indian Valley College campus locally here in Novato in Marin County is a great place to walk, and it's good and flat and nice and wide. I see people with scooters and wheelchairs and bicycles and different things out there. So there's one too.
There's a pathway over near Marin General Hospital also that's really good. It's really long
and it's paved.
Really flat.
It's paved too, isn't it?
What's that? Yeah, it's paved, yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, in addition to the travel tips in the book and your own story, there's a huge amount of resources in the book and other, what I'll call the bonus stuff. Can you say a little bit about the other bonus materials that you have there?
Oh, in the resources and bibliography, yeah. There is a pretty good sized resource and bibliography section, and it has a lot of sites that I use for travel, and also has disability websites and and then the one chapter in the book talks about how to start a support group or find one for yourself. So for whether it's you have a physical disability or you want to go bird watching or whatever, there are groups, and I think that being in the community is especially important. Yeah. So the resources and bibliography has it has stuff about handicap sports, and I'm sorry, I have to look through the book to actually tell you what all it has, but it's a pretty extensive section.
Well, and this may sound like a kind of negative question, and I don't mean it to be, but I'm wondering if there's one thing that you really ache that you wish you could do that you can't quite, because I know it must be frustrating because there's got to be certain things that are just out of your reach.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for asking that. Well, one of the things that I have always regretted is not being able to go on long hikes in the woods, because I really love the woods. So, I probably would have been a backpacker, although I don't know if I could have gotten Richard to go with me. So, I regret now that I'm having more physical difficulty than I did when I was younger, but there's always something to do. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences, so I'm very fortunate that way. I probably also would have gone out for cheerleading in high school, but who knows where that would have led. I may not have been as interesting a person if I became that bunch.
Let's see. So let's see. Brooke, our publisher, asks, she says, both of you are multi-genre authors, and now that you've both written a couple of books each, what can you share about writing self-help, memoir, and fiction for Betsy? And congratulations, Francine, and happy birthday, Betsy. Gee, I get to read my own happy birthday messages, isn't that nice? So I'll let you start, Francine. What can you say about being a multi-genre? I call it genre jumping. So,
well, I had a little consideration about this book because it has more than one genre in it. And they say that's a no-no because it's got travel, it's got self-help, and it has stories, which are my memoir. Although a lot of travel writers do essentially write memoir. They write memoir about the travel that they're doing. But I did try to make this a completely separate book. This is intended as self-help, essentially, as an advice book. And the first one was definitely a story with an arc, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it was going someplace. Mm-hmm. So it's just a completely different thing. It was kind of nice to do something different. I think the first one was a little harder to write because it was so important to me that the story aspect of it was, it wasn't just, I want to tell my story. It took you someplace, so.
Well, I can say for me, the first book I launched was a novel. And I also want to say that my first book came out when I was 53 years old. So it wasn't like I started at 22 or anything like that. So I started with a novel and I kind of thought I was going to be a novelist forever. And then I had a couple of other books in mind and I asked our publisher which one should go first. Should I do the next novel or should I do the memoir or the how-to book? And she said, oh, definitely do the novel first. Well, I did the memoir next, and then I did the how-to, and now I'm doing the novel. So sorry, Brooke, I completely disregarded your advice. And I think it was that you have to write the book that's calling you in that moment. And for me, it's all storytelling. Even though they're different styles of storytelling, there's still, even in an informational book, the real learnings come out of the examples and the stories that make it more real. Otherwise, it's just a list of resources or of how to do something. And if you want to, list how to make a peanut butter sandwich, so that's fine. But if you make me taste the peanut butter and the jelly, then I'm going to get more excited about that. So I think they all get tied together with storytelling in one form or another.
Yes.
And whether it's a lived story or an imagined story, for me, it almost doesn't make a difference, except that when you're excavating your own memoir material, of course, that's got some more emotional content to it sometimes. Although I've found that I can say a different kind of truth in my fiction than I can in my memoir, because I'm not encumbered by the facts of my life. I can make those up to illustrate the true thing. I call it essential truth, the essential truth thing I'm trying to convey. So I like being a genre jumper. My pocketbook doesn't necessarily like it. I don't think it's the most profitable way to be an author, but that's the truth. So there's another question here. It says, when traveling, the local hotel beds can be quite high. Do you have difficulty getting into bed in a hotel, and how do you know how to find a hotel with lower height beds or with any kind of other special accommodations you might need?
That's true. They are too high, especially for a short person. They are, and I have to kind of like myself up onto them, but our bed's a little bit high too. So I have some experience with that. We actually had a really high bed when we first got married, and I had to have a footstool to get up into it. After a while, I thought, let's ditch this box springs. This is crazy. So actually, when I go to hotels, I have some priorities that are not about the bed. And if we are driving, we sometimes take a foam pad with us, because that's the problem I find, that sometimes they're way too firm. But although beds have really improved, I think, in the last 5 or 10 years. But I have priorities. One of them is there a restaurant in the hotel or some kind of food service? And if there's not, is there a restaurant like next door? Because I don't want to have to go 2 or 3 blocks to get something to eat. And a second request for me is always that they don't put me at the end of a hallway, because it's a long walk. And if I'm close then to the elevator, I may be able to just go down to the lobby if I need to, instead of having to take my scooter to go to the other end of the hotel.
So the location of the room itself in proximity to the lobby or the elevator is something you have to think about.
So I don't worry so much about the beds as I do about the physical accommodations. And then my next thing is there a pool? So.
Well, you're a swimming lady. So, well, I understand, Francine, that I was surprised to learn in your book that you have a great deal in common with a certain gold medal winner.
I do.
Can you tell me about that?
Yes, I can. This is actually after the exercise section of my book. There's a lot of stuff on the yoga that I do every morning. I do yoga and core strengthening, and if you can get down on the floor, and if you can't, I recommend chair yoga. But I also do a pool exercise program several times a week. And I love being in the water. Here's an audacious and incongruous comparison. 5 things I, the partially paralyzed polio survivor, have in common with Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimming champ. Number 1, we have the same arm span to height ratio. The length of our outstretched arms measured to our middle fingertips is greater than our height, though his difference is about 6 inches and mine is less, naturally. This monkey arm ratio is unusual and useful for powerful swimming. In my case, the reason this probably happened is that I was meant to be 2 inches taller. If my right leg had not been stunted by polio, I would likely have grown to that height. Number 2, our favorite stroke is the butterfly, 'cause long arms. I love to watch Phelps's signature propulsion dolphin kick, which I can't quite do, but sometimes modify my kick to imitate. Number 3, we count strokes, which is useful when your goggles get water in them or whenever you cannot see the end of the pool. You can also use counting to keep from hitting your head when on your back. Counting is almost imperative if you want to be competitive, which I don't. Number 4, when we're not swimming as a practice, we don't enjoy going in oceans, rivers, lakes, or other pools for fun because we already spend so much time in water working out, and being wet for a couple of hours a day is fun enough. Number 5, we have both smoked pot. Me in the past, and him, maybe not just the past. No judgment. That's it. But given you'd think we'd have a little in common, that we would have little in common at all, it's a lot, isn't it?
Well, Francine, as we move toward the close of our time, I want to ask you, in addition to just the helpful hints and all of that anybody can find within the books and the delightful stories, I'm wondering if there's a real message that you had in writing it that you'd like anyone to take away from reading it.
Well, I always like to think that my slogan is the same as Wavy Gravy's, which is, if you don't have a sense of humor, it's just not funny. And I want people to be encouraged to continue to have a good time, whether it's just, go to the park and have a cup of coffee, or watch a movie or travel video at home, invite a friend over or something. But I would like people to not get isolated because of physical impairments, and just to try your best to continue to enjoy whatever part of life is available to you. That's what I plan to do. And I, expect to keep living like that for whatever, maybe another 20 years or so.
Let's hope, at least. Well, I'm wondering if you can think of a time when you kind of hit a wall in your travel, when you reached a frustration point that just felt like you couldn't get past, if there was like a mini meltdown of sorts, and what might cause that for you and how you prevent it and get out of it.
I've had many meltdowns in the last week. Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Technology drives me crazy. I can really definitely have a meltdown with that. With regard to my disability, I think it's more when I'm in pain. When I have back pain, it can mean, okay, we're not going to do this today, so stay home, read a book, lay down with an ice pack. And that's disappointing, especially if you're out someplace and you were hoping to have a wonderful day. But when we travel, I always keep the attitude that things may change, because they do. I can remember when we went to when I went on this 3-month trip through India and the Middle East, and we got stuck in between Israel and Egypt, or the Sinai Peninsula. We got stuck, and we didn't know who was going to take us back. It was really rough. So, we just sat down on the cement and waited for the decision to happen. And that happens when you travel too. It may be that you're too tired to go to a big museum that day, so you go sit in the park. So, it's really a matter of adaptations. Sure, like, yeah, I've definitely had meltdowns when we travel and other times too.
Well, but I don't think you have to have physical challenges for that to be the case. I've seen a lot of people throw fits and have fights with their spouses in the airport, right? Because the plane's delayed or this or that. So I think that's true of all of us. And that's the other thing that kind of struck me in your book is that you have that attitude of adapt, make it work. It's still traveling. It's all gravy. It's, it's all good. You can even sitting alone, I mean, really, how terrible would it be to have to just sit out in Paris and sit in a sidewalk cafe and read?
Exactly.
Right?
Or even your local park, I mean, or, we've got a grocery store 3 blocks from here, and they have a patio, and, we just go over there and have a cup of tea and watch the ducks and the egrets and stuff. It's good enough.
Well, I'm wondering, now that the book is out and it's beginning to circulate, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and can you give us your website and those kinds that kind of information?
Sure. Yeah, it's Francine Falk-Allen.com. That's FRANCINEALLEN, or FALK-ALLEN. Sorry. Anyway, .com. So yes, both my books are listed there, so you can read about what they're like. I'm a bit behind in my blog writing. I've been really busy with promoting this new book. And I always like to plug Book Passage. They're a great store. And if you don't find that, well, you can actually order online from them. And if for some reason that's not convenient for you, then please do patronize your local bookstore. And
I want to put in
libraries too, for people that are strapped for cash.
Yes, I absolutely want to put in a big plug for that. Our indie bookstores are more than bookstores. They're not just retail shops. They're centers. They give you a read on what the community is. They are educators. They expose us to books we might not otherwise have found. And yes, of course, there's that big online dealership, and every once in a while you have to hold your nose and do it. But for the most part, I really want to patronize our local bookstores whenever we can. And even if you live at a distance, even if you live across the country, whether you've got a local store or you just want to use Book Passage Corte Madera, you can use that as well, or Book Passage San Francisco. They've got more than one outlet, so it's a great place to get your books. I'm wondering, now that some pandemic rules are lax and we're lucky enough to be able to gather here as a group, which is beautiful, when it feels really safe to do so, what adventures do you have planned?
Oh, well, we're hoping to travel in the fall, but we're doing our research and we won't be going any place that has a low vaccination rate. So I've been looking at possibly Hawaii or New Mexico. There are lots of other places we would love to go. I'd like to go see my cousin up in Toronto, but I don't know whether Canada's going to let us in for a while. We would love to go to New Orleans. Louisiana doesn't have very good rates, but New Orleans is pretty good. So, we'll see. New York City, I'd love to go to New York, but we're not going to Europe for probably a couple of years, I think. So, but yeah, we want to go. We definitely want to go.
And where's your bucket list place?
Bucket list. Well, actually, I'll tell you what my bucket list is.
Okay.
It's seeing Bruno Mars in person. That's my bucket list.
Seeing Bruno Mars in person. And well, that brings to mind like arenas and things. I imagine some of those are challenging.
Oh yeah, sometimes they are. Like the Greek Theater. Oh my gosh. That place is tough. Although they are really trying to accommodate people in wheelchairs and with crutches and all that kind of stuff and make it easy, if you let them know in advance. But just getting to the place is really I mean, once you're in there, it's a great place to hear music. But yeah, that's at UC Berkeley for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, some of them are really pretty tough. Like there's a theater in San Francisco that we went to hear Paula Poundstone once, and I got there and I said our seats were upstairs, and I said, "Where's the elevator?" And they said there isn't one. So we had to climb those damn stairs, and there was no banister either. You know, I mean, San Francisco can be rough that way because it's an old city. So
It's so hilly.
Anyway, yeah, there are places that are tough, but
it's a vertical
got to hear the
city.
music.
Well, Francine, your book, No Spring Chicken, is an inspiration and a resource guide and an encouragement and a tickle and a delight. And I want to thank you for writing it, and thank you for allowing me to have this chat with you and to let us all listen in on it. And so I think that that'll be just about it in just a moment. Do you have any last words for us?
Well, Betsy, thank you. I just so appreciate you spending your birthday with me. That's just
lucky me.
Fantastic. And thank everybody who came here today to be with us. We have a small group of fully vaccinated friends and relatives, and it's just been wonderful to see everyone be outside.
Thank you both so much for doing this. And yet this is actually, I believe, Book Passage's first hybrid sort of event that we've done. So it's, you know, so thrilling that it was such a success and such a beautiful event. And we had so much incredible feedback in the chat for both of you. So many people had just wonderful, wonderful things to share, and such appreciation for Francine, for you sharing this story with the world and your experience, and giving voice to a lot of things that people, you know, have questions about and want to know about, and just did not have the understanding or the resource to know that they should be looking at these things, especially when they travel, and in terms of like hotel accommodations and all the things that are possible that they should be, you know, asking for themselves instead of suffering. So thank you so much for sharing this and for your experience. And everyone at home watching, please buy the book. It's called No Spring Chicken. We have it at Book Passage, and we have signed book plates available as well. So if you buy the book from Book Passage, you will get a signed copy while supplies last. So I hope everyone will do that. And I want to just thank you both again so much for being here and for doing this with us and for sharing this with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach.
Okay, good night, everyone.